Well, shooters and reloaders out there, this is Fortune Cookie 45LC coming to you from the Hot Lead Zone Express. And what you see here is my Thompson Center Encore with the MGM custom barrels, a full 1-inch bull barrel, and it's got the shotgun forend on it that allows it to go ahead and work with the 1-inch full bull barrel. We're going to reload for this, but before we do, you need to know that this barrel has a 1 7-inch twist. That's a pretty fast twist rate, don't you think, for a 30-30 Winchester? But that's because I intend to shoot the 200 grain bullets with this barrel. Now the 200 grain bullets have high ballistic coefficient, better for longer range performance. The ballistic coefficients are in excess of 0.500. In fact, the Sierra 200 grain hollow point boat tail match bullet that I'm going to be loading has a ballistic coefficient of 0.565. Now we like that. Sierra happens to have a 200 grain 30 caliber bullet that has a much more of a secant ogive that has a ballistic coefficient of 0.800. But we couldn't get a hold of any of those, and in fact you can't get the 0.565s now because they're in short supply. But I have some, as you see here. We're going to go ahead and load those. So you might ask, why did you get the 1 7-inch twist rate? Because after all, aren't all 30-30s 1 10-inch twist? And in fact, 308s and 30-06s are also 1 10-inch twist rate. And it's been that way for many, many years. So why the 1 7? Turns out that if you look at the Sierra manual, the 200 grain bullet head you see here can be stabilized with a 1 10-inch twist rate. So again, why did you go with a 1 7? And what I'm about to share with you is that it may very well be that we are on the verge of having to rethink all of our rifle twist rates because of what's been going on in the shooting industry. If the 1 10-inch twist rate for 30 caliber is no longer a good idea, then we're going to have to rewrite all of our reloading manuals, all of those kind of things. Well, what has been happening? And that is that the tendency now is to go to longer, heavier bullets with high ballistic coefficients. So even though 1 10 might very well minimally stabilize this bullet, this long bullet here, going to a faster twist rate would be a better idea. Now the bullet in the middle is a 165 grain Nosler, and the thinking is if you go to a faster twist rate, like say 1 8 or even 1 7, like in my 30-30 Winchester barrel, if we go to a faster twist rate, aren't we over-stabilizing these lighter bullets? Say 165, say 150 grain bullet, are we going to have problems over-stabilizing? And turns out, I just shot a whole bunch of factory loads with the 150 grain bullets from Remington and Winchester and Federal, and they shot just fine with my 1 7-inch twist rate. The average was 1-inch groups at 100 yards using a rather inexpensive 3 to 9 power Bushnell scope. And if I had a better scope, those groups would have averaged less than 1 inch. So they stabilize the 150 grain bullets fine with a faster twist rate, no problem. And what the faster twist rate does is it will allow us to stabilize the heavier bullets where the slower twist rates wouldn't be able to stabilize them. This point is even more important when you look at the all copper bullets that we're required to use in California, and other states are towing that same line, so we might be looking at all copper bullets more and more in the future. Well, it turns out that the all copper bullets are lighter than the lead core bullets, and so the same weight bullets are longer. This happens to be a 168 grain bullet here by Barnes, all copper bullet, and you see that the bullet is actually longer than the 200 grain lead core bullet, and much longer than the 165 grain lead core bullet. So if we gotta go to the all copper bullets, we're gonna need faster twist rates. Now it just so happens that Barnes says that 1 in 11 twist will stabilize this bullet. They've done it with technology. But even if that's true, if we go to 180 grain or heavier bullet to try and regain the ballistic coefficient, then we're going to have faster twist rates to stabilize the longer bullets that are lighter. Remember the rule: bullet stability requires higher twist rates the heavier the bullet, the longer the bullet, or the slower the bullet. So we can go ahead and conquer the slowness by using a bigger case, but when it comes to the length of the bullet and the weight of the bullet, we need faster twist rates to handle them. So you might consider that in your rifles in the future, that you're going to be using 30 calibers in the 1 in 8 or faster twist rates. Now look at your 6.5 Creedmoor. Those start at 1 in 8 inch twist rate, and in fact a lot of 6.5 Creedmoor shooters wish they had the 1 in 7. Okay, there are tons of videos on the loading of 30-30 with the regular bullets, like these 158 grain flat nose soft points made by Federal. But you can bet there aren't many videos on the loading of a 200 grain long Sierra bullet in the 30-30, so let's go ahead and do one. So let's start off with our rifle here. You see the chamber is empty, and you go ahead and close the action, and that's what you get. Now take fired brass from this rifle and you chamber the fired brass again, and listen to this. Not only does the brass go back into the chamber, but the action works, as you see. What this tells you is that you really don't need to full-length resize this brass. Now, if you keep doing the neck sizing only, at some point you're going to have to full-length resize. But this is once fired factory brass, and you just don't need to full-length resize that. And that's true for all of them. Just take another case by random. You see that? There's no need to full-length resize that brass. Even though you'll hear that for our single-shot rifles, you need to full-length resize your brass. Now, of course, all of you experienced reloaders out there know this. Some of the new reloaders might not know this, and that is, you do need to neck size this brass. Even if you don't need to full-length resize it, you need to neck size this, because right now, the bullet won't be held. You see what I mean? That bullet drops into the case and it just comes right back out. You need to resize the neck to hold the bullet. Now, there's no better way to do this neck sizing than by using the Lee neck size collet die. And this is what it looks like when it's not in the press. It has this cylindrical look with this aluminum screw cap on it, and the newest ones have the knurled die lock ring instead of the older hex aluminum die lock ring, and these are really nice. Now, the thing about the shell holder is that the 3030 is a kind of a perverse shell holder. It's the number 3, but you can't really use that for any other caliber except, say, 7mm BR. See, whereas the 308, 30-06, 243, 260 Remington, 45 ACP, all those use the same shell holder. The 3030 uses that number 3, kind of a perverse one. Anyway, you go ahead and adjust the collet die so that you go ahead and feel the collet squeezing the neck right there. Now, the Lee instructions say you want to have a lot of pressure, but you really don't need that much. You only need enough neck sizing so that you'll be able to hold the bullet. Now, it just happens that we need a little bit more than what I've got here. And there it is. You see, that's good tension to hold a bullet. So let's go ahead and rotate the case a little bit and run it through the die again. That way, the collet, that squeezing and those areas between the collet, if you rotate the case and run it through again, you'll make sure you get those areas also. There, you see? We got good neck tension. You don't need to have any more pressure than that. So we'll go ahead and run all of our brass through our neck size collet die, and that also deprimes the case at the same time. I'll just show you a couple more of those, but anyway, run it in, and you'll hear the dead primer come out. Here it goes. There he goes. Dead primer just fell into the little reservoir. Now then you feel the tension, and give it a little turn, and run it in again, and you got good neck tension there. You can actually feel the tug back when you try and pull that case out. Okay, we'll go ahead and do all of our brass. Now we have to measure our brass to make sure it's not too long. So there's the brass. The maximum overall length of the brass is 2.039 inches. And if it is over that, we've got to trim it to 2.029. Well, you see, we're at 2.030, which is only 1/1000th over the trim to length, and therefore we don't need to do any trimming. We don't need to do any trimming until we're over 2.039. And this measurement needs to be taken after any resizing is done. Just to give you an idea, we go ahead and take out new Starline brass, and that's 2.030. It's the same as our once fired brass, so we're just fine. Now the neat thing about this is that you don't have to use any lube because you're squeezing the neck to size and then you're releasing the neck, so when it comes out of the die, there's no drag. You shouldn't feel any drag as you're taking that case out. And of course, you don't need any lube. By the way, a little word on case lubing. If you've got to do it, best way is get a plastic container like this, scatter your cases down there, and then go ahead and take your spray case lube that you make yourself using Hornady Unique Case Lube 9:1 with 100% or 99% isopropyl alcohol. I use IsoHeet. That works real well. 9:1 mix, warm water to get it mixed the first time. After that, when it separates, just shake it like this and then spray your cases like this. You might want to put a little bit in the case neck like that with your finger. The same Hornady Unique Case Lube, put it on the inside of the neck and then do your full length resizing. But once again, the Lee collet neck sizing die does away with all that lubing. Now you might ask, well, Fortune Cookie, you didn't go ahead and clean these cases with dry corn cob or wet tumbling. Well, the first time you fire factory brass or brand new brass, it's really not that dirty. Sure, you have a little bit of smudge on the inside, but that doesn't hurt anything when you reload it. So I would say if your cases don't look that dirty, just go ahead and skip that cleaning step. But if you want to clean your cases, I recommend using the wet tumble, because that traps all of your contaminants instead of having it concentrated in your dry media, and the dust will be a factor in contamination, and you'll get some lead exposure from that, but not with the wet tumble. And also, because you didn't have to do any trimming, that means you don't have to do any deburring of the case neck, because the factory took care of that already. Now, if you had to trim this back, then you'd have raw brass there that you'd have to deburr. But no deburring necessary when you don't have to trim. Okay, we got a goodly amount of brass here. I do some shooting that I don't put on videos, so that's why I have all this once fired brass. But now we want to go ahead and clean the primer pockets. And so even though there's no point in uniforming the pocket, I like to clean my primer pocket by uniforming the pocket also. So to do that, I use my RCBS Case Prep Center. This is the large rifle primer pocket uniformer right here, a carbide cutter. We'll go ahead and run it on there, and we'll just go ahead and do all of them that way. So you can see how clean those are. Really nice. Now, of course, here's the case trimmer that I didn't need to use. So we'll just put that off to the side. To prime, I'm going to use my RCBS bench prime tool. Give you a good look at that. Way it works is you go ahead and lower the arm. Sometimes you have to, when you're using a Lee shell holder, you have to kind of work it a little bit. You prime the case, as you see there. Perfect priming. We're using Winchester large rifle primers. And then when you activate the arm, it puts another primer into the arm there. And then you put another case in, prime it, as you see there. Now this goes pretty quick actually. When the camera's not in the way. Like that. So there's your priming. By the way, the little clip here is used to hold the primer tube at the right position for good feeding. By the way, the shortage of primers is a frustration right now, but they will return, and when they do, stock up. Now, to dispense our powder charges, we're using the Hornady automatic powder dispenser set for 30 grains, and the powder we're using is Winchester 760. And you see there 30 grains right there. Now we're loading 5 rounds at 30 grains, 5 rounds at 30.5, and 5 rounds at 31 grains for our range testing. We're not interested in shooting a ladder per se, because the 30-30 is not a precision caliber as a rule. Now if we're getting good accuracy, I might very well work up a precision load for it, but let's see. I do know that factory 150 grain bullets shoot into a little less than an inch at 100 yards. Okay, bullet seating. We're using the fine RCBS Cowboy 3030 bullet seater die, and we're going to go ahead and take our case that's been charged with powder, and then we got the 200 grain Sierra there. Going to go ahead and run that into the die and seat the bullets to 2.810 inches. So let's just go ahead and measure this one. Now, of course, we should use a comparator, but if it's anywhere close to 2.810, look at that, 2.810 right on it. So we like that. Now you might ask, how did you figure out the seating depth? Well, the way you can do it with these single shot rifles is you take a bullet like this and you just drop it into the chamber. What happens is that bullet will go to the lens and it'll get to the lens and stop. Then you simply take your caliper and you go down there like this until your little feeler measurement touches the bullet. You're measuring from the back of the barrel to the base of the bullet. So then all you got to do is add that dimension to the length of the bullet, and that'll give you the overall length to touch the lens. So you see the distance from the back of the barrel to the base of the bullet, 1.420 inches, and then the length of the bullet, 1.410 inches, gives you 2.830, and we want to back it off 20 thousandths so that we got room to be able to creep up toward the lens later. 2.810 is the seating depth that we want to use, and that's what you saw. Now, Winchester 760 powder is the same as there he goes. It's the same as Hodgdon 414. Now notice that when I seat this bullet, I'm feeling the amount of force it takes to seat that bullet, because that should be consistent with every one you seat, and it is. By the way, the Hornady automatic powder dispenser had no overcharges. It just went ahead and did 15 straight just perfectly. So look at the length of that 200 grain load compared to the factory 150 grain load. No way are you going to be able to use this round in a lever action rifle, but in our single shots this works out real well. So here is a dummy round, and you'll see the action closes real well, perfectly. And yes, show you that's a dummy round, no primer. So we'll see you at the range. Bye for now.